Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and I am joined once again by the ever handsome Sai.
Hello, this is the ever handsome Sai, and I'm joining Lucid once again for another live turn.
Yes, that means we have been being good boys, and we've been keeping up with the game, and it's turn 41 now. I was hoping this turn, it was kind of the first thing I looked at when I popped it open, was that we had a message from Zabalba explaining some of maybe what we could expect coming up diplomatically from him. Because there's a bit of confusion last time, but we don't have that. I suppose the only summary I'll give before we just jump into this turn of the previous turn is that there's some free agents being made in the world. The Vedheim coalition has fallen apart, so we technically have our first coalition survivor, and Arco is looking like they have finally started to attract the ire of some of their neighbors, with primarily Agartha and Zabalba looking like indicating that they're going to be going on them.
Right. So Xibalba would be going on them based on their conversation with Agartha, and from the sound of things, Agartha certainly believes that Xibalba is going to be joining them on this little venture. But we haven't heard directly from Xibalba that they're attacking Arco or a timeline for which they're attacking Arco. We only know essentially that that's the downstream effects of Agartha trying to invade Xibalba and then discovering that they don't have a partner in doing so.
Right. So let's start this episode off with the messages we have from Gath. Assassins killed some stuff, including my Hall of Fame commander with Thunderbow in 27 and 203. So if I manage to break the walls this turn, he'll only have one turn of proper cap assassination. Hopefully a million scouts will be enough to mitigate that and protect critical mages. Other than this, Foul Vapors and Mass Flight should do it. Let's talk about Diplo in the world situation. Agartha, maybe unwillingly, broke the anti-Vedheim coalition, meaning that only Utgard is now in the war with Vedheim now. Wait, how did Agartha do it?
I am not sure, actually, because the only thing that I could think of is that when they broke their nap with Xibalba, and then, that whole chain of events wound up happening, which led to them eventually fighting Arco, they got Xibalba to back out of the war against Vedheim, which in turn got Gia to back out. So it might be like that's the domino chain there.
Okay, that makes sense. I hadn't pieced it together, but that makes a lot of sense. Meaning that only Utgard is at war with Vedheim now, which will probably lead to him getting eaten. That is a wise surmising.
That's right, yeah.
Summation, okay.
Summation is like when you sum everything up.
Yeah. I would rather that this didn't happen, because I think that having smaller nations is good for the game, and we've also been good neighbors. But I can't do much about it except vulturing Utgard from my side and not letting Vedheim get all of it. For now, I haven't canceled my nap with Utgard or Agartha, who continues to fight Pythium. It's a big question of why Pythium continues fighting him, though. Yeah, we've spent a fair amount of time looking into that malaise, but it's tricky. There's not really... It's kind of like... Did you ever watch, just to go wildly off topic here, did you ever watch the Go... I think it was like the essentially DeepMind or whatever that was playing. I forget what they called it.
Oh, they're playing the Go guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And it started behaving very weirdly. So all the engineers who were working on it were like looking at it, and towards the end of the game, it started making all these really weird moves. And like moves, like sometimes it makes moves and you're like, okay, this thing's on a different level. But it was making these moves and it was like, you couldn't explain it. Like, it just didn't make sense. And they didn't look like good moves. Everybody was pretty certain they were bad moves. And it's because it wasn't trying to win more. It was trying to increase the chance that it won, even if it only won by a one-piece margin. It was just doing things to make it increasingly impossible that it could, like, tie it up. And it gets to how... And I think humans have the same thing, which is why I bring it up. In that... when we're in a weird... It also... AlphaGo also behaved very weirdly when it was losing. So in the cases where it's already won and where it's basically always going to lose, it just starts doing erratic things. And I think that's sort of what we're seeing from Pythium. It just, like, there's not a good move.
I wouldn't even call it crazy erratic. It's just you could kind of pick, who you want to fight, and he wants to finish this war that he started.
Yeah.
So, it gives him a mild victory at least to be able to beat somebody. And when you don't have a chance of actually winning the game anymore, it's just a matter of choosing like what are your secondary objectives.
Right.
And in Pythium's case, his secondary objective for now seems to be finishing this thing that he started with Agartha back several turns ago.
I have very good long-term relations with Pan, which we agreed to continue until one of us becomes too strong. This is great for us because it secures a very long border. This leaves Xibalba and Arco. I think that having Xibalba in the game is beneficial for me because they're a better blood power, a bit better, and more sacreds. Therefore, everyone will likely consider them a bigger threat. Alas, I have no desire to fight hundreds of Aussies and would rather have someone else fight them. That's the real truth. The real truth comes out.
Yeah, no, I actually do agree with him that the perception of being, oh, you're now the only big scary blood nation left is, bad diplomatically.
Yeah.
So having someone else that you can point to be like, oh, actually, they're bigger and badder in terms of blood power is, a little bit of a diplomatic leg up. The thing that I don't agree with, though, is his decision to retain naps with what I would consider to be functionally dead nations. Because depending on how quickly Vedheim moves and how conservatively they play, there might not be that much left of Utgard if Gath decides to retain his naps until, it becomes a complete foregone conclusion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think at the same time, though, it's still possible he suffers a very unlikely reversal trying to take Marignon's cap, so maybe he's trying to not... But even then, he could... It's not like they're going to be attacking him. The naps that he has with them are essentially one-sided. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, in Agartha's case, there's nothing for him to attack because everything has a Pythium flag on it right now.
Right.
But, yeah, different story there.
But, he should end his
case,
nap with Pythium, too. I mean, it's not... Pythium's a functionally dead nation, too, right now.
Yeah, most likely.
Their research is quite bad. Research graphs have been shared by Arco, and I think they're not a huge threat for now. We agreed that we should not fight each other because elimination of one will mean people go for the other blood sacred nation. And I think we won't, at least for a while. Same logic applies to Vedheim, though they are indeed a large threat with all of their magic and options. So Arco would be my target after the Marignon ordeal is finished. I think that despite his size and 3 capitals, he's quite beatable and I want my throne back. Now that Agartha and Xibalba are about to attack him, so he has been in contact with Xibalba, so this might be our best glimpse into Xibalba's mind to indicate that this plan is actually going to get followed through by Xibalba.
Yeah, and I assume, given that this is the finals, everyone's kind of talking with everyone regardless. So, word gets around. Right. I'll also say, though, that he doesn't have the option of fighting Vedheim. Those two don't have a border unless he's going through Utgard to get to him.
Yeah, I think that's correct. So now that Agartha and Xibalba are about to attack him, he should become an easier target. Yeah, and Arco was still like in a power-up phase. He's probably gotten some really important research in the past few turns, but he's going to be getting a lot more, but he still has not... He's in no way started to reach kind of like the magic supremacy phase that he can get to pretty quickly if he gets, 10 more turns. So... This is a much softer target than it's going to be in 10 turns, especially now with Agartha and Xibalba attacking.
Yeah, I will say, though, that Arco only just recently surpassed Gath.
Right.
So Gath himself is now slightly behind Arco.
Right. Agartha is scary because of the late-game wishing potential. He has almost twice my research, while I have almost run out of fire gems, so the difference will only be increasing.
That's his lamps.
Right. Tianchi is just scary, and I fully acknowledge that I'm quite scary too, so we'll see how it goes. And then he has an outgoing message to everybody just saying the forges of Gath are open.
I think that Tianchi's scariness as a threat has more to do with their gem income than it does with the nation itself, because their ability to convert that gem income into power is a little bit tricky. Like, it's definitely a nation that has a lot of interesting tools, but it doesn't have an easy, obvious hammer the way that, Seir, Shadim, or Ozlotls, for that matter, can become,
Right.
nor an obvious resource advantage the way that any blood power or Erythia's wish engines can get.
Yeah, that's true. He does, I think, have pretty good scales, though, if I recall. Let's double check that, make sure I'm right.
His scales are fine. He's not full scales the way that Pangea is, since he's got,
Yeah,
misfortune instead of luck 3.
that's
Really, his power is just from that enormous gem income.
yeah. Which is so often the case for TNG. TNG typically, less so in late age than in other eras, but in other eras especially, is usually going to be number one in gem income. So
Yeah, good diversity, great path variance for site searching. And then, yeah, they have some national gem sinks, but the national gem sinks that they have aren't like crazy powerful. And the fairly modest bless that this TNG took, especially given that it's somewhat thug focused, isn't going to make his Celestial Warriors that crazy either.
right.
So it's really just like he's got gems to spend, and then like how efficiently he's going to be able to do that and convert that into, going and winning battles is really the question.
So given that, let's come over here and take a look at all the TNG battles.
I know that you're looking at it by just checking it out on the border, but if you look in the messages, the first couple battles that they've got there are magic phase.
Okay.
The first 3, so the first 3 battles at the top are magic phase, and you can tell because these ghouls are from Arouse Hunger.
Right.
So he is using an air mage to drop in and do, air mage things in order to hit these prepared pythium stacks, presumably because he expects these stacks to be doing foul vapor. So he's essentially doing exactly the same thing that you would do against a Dominion's 4 Rain of Stones type defense, where you drop in the magic phase in order to disrupt it before moving your more vulnerable army in. The problem that he ran into, though, is that this army is not just a Foul Vapors setup. It's in fact got some Leos in there instead. So while there is a Serpent Priest, I don't think he didn't even cast Foul Vapors. So he was both able to defend against this attack, and this defense squad wouldn't even have done the thing that he was scared about, namely the Foul Vapors trap.
Right. But
he did
kill
some
3
mages, yeah.
And he burned some gems. He spent some gems on his own, but I think there was swarm casting too from Pythium's side.
Yeah, I think it's fair to. I think it's fair to say that
a wash in terms of gem expenditure. Probably a slight benefit for TNG, just considering he killed 3 mages and he didn't lose his. So
sure, no, I actually don't think that this one in particular wound up being too bad. But he could have also just taken this with a regular phase move into the same province.
Right. And now he's got 2 air elementals and they've got 1. And his air elementals are getting caught up on PD.
The province defense,
the ghouls, I'm sorry. While these guys are in the back here. I think this was kind of cool. This was an air communion. So it was 3 mages that had communioned up with the master and slaves both having air paths.
Yeah, this is something that TNG had actually seen as well. So he knew pretty much exactly what he was jumping into, because this is a squad that had killed one of his thugs.
Right. And what's important here is that armies of TNG have routed. And this is why, while both his mages are still alive, and really either side could have routed here first. And whoever side does route there, which is TNG, you're going to see these guys start to dissolve. So in the meantime, this air elemental's jumping back. These guys are still fatigued out, though at least one of them is twice born. This one's still got more air gems on him, and he's going to die. And then this guy's still fatigued out, and he's going to die. So this battle was pretty costly for TNG. Well, for both of them. I mean, they both lost a ton of mages, but probably a bit more of a loss for TNG because he also lost some gems that were not spent that battle as well.
Yeah, on the upside, at least one of them is twice born, so, not a complete loss there. But the interesting thing to me mostly is that he jumped into these things essentially to disrupt a very specific trap, right? In order to defeat this Foul Vapors play that Pythium has been doing when it wasn't actually there in either of the 2 provinces that he attacked into.
Yeah, so some pretty good mind games from Pythium, not being predictable. Versus Agartha, Pythium put a Foul Vapors trap in every province. But here you can see they're mixing it up. They're doing all sorts of different things. He did follow this attack up with a proper low commitment raid from a ground-based army, and this was successful.
Yeah. And I'd say that that's kind of a medium commitment, maybe, because assuming that his magic phase attack had one, he would also have had more he would have had at least one more air elemental summoner in that province. And since there's a lab here, he can re-up on gems as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So he's taken this province, but as you say, if the mages had stayed, it would be a medium commitment force here. Now there was another battle here.
And this is just Pythium counter rating with basically the lowest commitment stack that anyone can field. This is just like bare handful of Pythium's heavy infantry.
Right. And it works. He pings this with the commander, and it looks like there's an anti-Foul Vapors crew waiting. We'll take a look at the actual commanders here, but it's...
this looks like a Thug's... No, you're right. This is anti-Foul Vapors and anti-Army. I mean, assuming that that's Wailing Winds.
Yeah. Was there a...
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking, looking at it, oh, this is a Thug squad, but it might be, actually. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I can't tell. I mean, he could definitely make... They all have armor, everybody in this tile, so he can make it where these guys are not going to get killed easily. But an air elemental... Spell. Yeah, and a few air elementals will just ruin these guys' day. So hopefully TNG mixes it up.
I mean, you say that, but they're going to be lucky, ethereal, and have at least one protection buff on them. So they're going to be pretty durable even to size 6 trampling.
Yeah, but I mean, I think they're still going to die. If not one air elemental, but multiple. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But if the nature mage is casting Howl, that's also going to be a great distraction because the air elementals will go squish them.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe not, but we also have a very cheeky attack here as we see Arco, who is about to be the target of a coalition. He has decided to poke TNG.
I would assume he bought this one, to be honest.
He has been trying to extort all of his neighbors out of land. It's possible he did, but...
It might be a very rude purchase attempt, but I don't think that he's just randomly attacking TNG here.
Okay.
The reason I think that is mostly just that his army in Ulm is still there, and this is the only force that he has on TNG's border. So he's definitely not looking to follow this up with like a proper fight.
That's possible. He's been extorting all of his neighbors all game. I can't get over it. And it's been, I mean, so far it's been working, but I think my estimation of it is you lose diplomatic currency every time you do it. And if TNG has the opportunity to stab him after this guy's been extorting him, like, I think he's going to, but who knows? Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe. I hope Ulm wins. Or, sorry, not Ulm, Arco.
Yeah. I think it's hard to win when you piss people off, but...
Well, I don't think he's going to, but I really hope he does.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting plot line. Also, a bunch of little pings down here. Oh my god. Okay, here we go. So Pythium, this is this cave we were talking about. They might, like, there's a kind of likely move from Agartha. They're going to probably come back in this cave, and Pythium could bear into it and consolidate both of his armies here. And that looks like what they've done.
Yeah, and this is really just a matter of resource disparity. Pythium just has enough mages that on advance and cast, they can clear this out. Look, Pythium literally could not script this at all, just put advance and cast on all those mages, take his hands off the keyboard and let it ride, and he'd probably win this fight. The sheer resource disparity is immense. And, you know, these Umbrals are nice. I do quite like them. He's going to be casting quickness on them as he can. Iron Warriors, maybe Strength of Giants. He's going to do as much as he can, but he's just facing way too many mages, and in particular, way too many death mages, which are just going to dust these guys, literally and metaphorically.
Summon Earth Power, Quickness. I don't really like the Earth Powers at the beginning. I feel like you just do Iron Warriors. Iron Warriors. These bugs actually may help. They may help get more buffs off. More Iron Warriors. Incinerate's coming out. More Iron Warriors, more quickness. Oh, God.
One of the problems with the Iron Warriors, though, is it is preferentially targeting squares that are shared. So the ones with the bodyguards in it are actually getting it over the individual Umbrals.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my gosh. So let's just take a look at these umbrals here. So this guy, 20 protection and quickness, but a lot of afflictions. This guy, 20 protection and quickness. This guy, this is the other thing, is the ones on the front are probably more likely to have quickness. Yeah, this guy, 20 protection and quickness. These are extremely elite umbrals. These are the kind of things like you
Yeah.
talk about, but it's actually pretty difficult to get Iron Warriors and quickness on this many of them.
Yeah, not until super late game where you have, your level 9 to put Iron Wars in everyone, and then your Deep Alteration mass quickness to put that on a large area of effect as well. With what he's got now, this is about the best that he can do.
Yeah.
But you're immediately seeing the effect of all of these armor negating spells being used to hit these guys.
Yeah, they do take several hits though, and there's enough of them that if they can get enough lifesteal in between these dust to dust hits, maybe, just maybe they can make it. Like, and the mages we're still getting some dust to dust, but not a tremendous amount. Like, let's take a look. Let's pause and take a look. Front line 28, okay, 59, 83. This guy's above 43, 58. 43. So it's a mix. Some of these are definitely looking to be dying. Oh my gosh. There's a big banishment. Oh no, there's a bunch of dust to dusts.
Yeah, well, he also has his prophet there.
Yeah.
The unsuitably named best prophets all die turn 4.
Yeah. Well, that was in response to his other prophet dying on turn 4.
Yeah, but still, this fellow is probably going to be his last prophet, if I had to take a guess.
Yeah. This is, I mean, these umbrals are holding up. It's just, and this is just one of the things with undead. And actually, there are ways to like sort of deal with this. I don't know. I'll be interested to see, does the dust to dust preferentially target those guys?
It's just dealing max damage, so it's going to preferentially target squares that have multiple people in them.
Yeah.
But it is also going to always target squares that have an umbral in them, just because it would overkill the Solus by so much.
Yeah, no, I'm wondering if these guys had it, because one of the things Agartha can do very well is like Horde of Skeletons spam. If you were to pack these guys up with Horde of Skeletons, would the dust to dust target the skeletons? Well, I guess the skeletons would infill the umbros and then that would get targeted. But I was wondering if you had pure skeletons, you could, if you could do Army of Giants on these guys, they would be the only person on the tile, and maybe then it would go for a skeleton. I don't know.
The problem is just that Longdead have such low hit points.
That's probably true.
But yeah, what this really came down to is just the fact that Pythium just had so many more mages.
Yeah.
And even then, it was close.
It was very close. These at the end, there were mages retreating. Like there was a ton of guys retreating here at the end. Just look back here. Look at this.
Yeah, it looks like he had more than 50% of his army dead or routed.
Yeah. So the Butcher's Ledger, interestingly, the mages all lived. All the, except for these guys who are immortal. So Agartha kept his mages, but he lost the Umbrals, which were, of course, the core of his resistance.
Well, he still got 5 of them, and he can always summon more.
Right.
But yeah, he didn't kill any of Pythium's mages, and as long as Pythium has any way of bringing some more chaff in here, there's no reason to think that he's going to lose. That said, if you look at what's in Agartha now, he got the Onyx Oracle, which is one of those rare, true super combatant units.
There's a very good chance. It depends exactly how he equips them, but if he gets like a charcoal shield or something, and then like 2 brands, like especially like if somehow he got his hand on 2 fire brands, because your issue fighting this army would be chaff generation, that the battle would time out.
Yeah, but you would generally want to use this guy defensively. Similar to golems, especially like any sort of fancy Phoenix Fire golems or whatnot. Yeah. You can't really use them offensively if anyone knows that they're coming, because otherwise, they just explode on turn timer.
Right. But this is one of the best super combatant heroes in the game. I mean, his main thing, well, he's a huge amount of hit points, but his main thing is he has built in, is it 20 or 25 natural protection?
And he's lifeless and mindless, so he can't be like Soul Slayed.
Right, lifeless, mindless, yeah, those are the other big traits. So, and he has earth and water, so he's sacred. So He's just a beast. It's one of the best. And the guy's amazing. In fact, it kind of sucks that he's so good because invariably you want to put him in like really hard situations, and he can die. And when you do
Yeah.
end up killing yours, you feel so bad because you can basically never replace him.
Especially if you use him offensively. That's the one thing that's very scary. Because you send him out into a hostile province, and then he just turn timers because he's mindless.
Right. But as you were pointing out, it's not just Onyx Oracle. There's actually a lot of dudes here. So
Yeah.
and their entrance guard, which is interesting, and normally entrance guards suck, but they have a big fort defense bonus, and that's significant because they're going to be able to hold up fort walls pretty well. There's literally a 0% chance that Pythium sieges through Agartha's cap. Somebody else is going to get it.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised that he went for those entrance guard. But I guess he doesn't have any bless whatsoever, so the blind fighters aren't going to be able to be just like enchanted with what's it called? Poison resistance.
Right.
But yeah, the problem with entrance guard typically, and like why you often don't see them, isn't that the units themselves are bad, because any human with 21 protection is like honestly kind of impressive. It's more that they cost 16 gold.
Right.
So when you compare 16 to 10, it's pretty easy to just go buy the cheaper units, especially crossbows and the like.
Yeah, I'm thinking he wants to make this like he just wants to sit in his little fort for as long as he can, being a little shit. Which I think is hilarious. I hope he does do that. But these are great units to do it. Like he's got probably 100 siege defense here right now.
Yeah, so entrance guard essentially count as 3 human units for defending a fort because their castle defense is +2. So in that sense, yes, they are good at that one very specific job. And I think that you're right, that his plan is to basically wait out Pythium here and make it so that Pythium at least won't be able to take Agartha itself.
There's also some, what should we call it? Like history repeating itself here, because Aaron, who's playing Agartha, is good friends with Nick Knight. And Nick Knight, of course, existed as a rogue city-state in last year's tournament for a very long amount of time. So he's probably gearing up to join the city-state Hall of Fame with his buddy.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm not sure if the players in this game are going to allow it, but it really just depends on if everyone else has competing priorities and if they don't mind, leaving the riches of Agartha to be unclaimed. Because that's really the difference, I think, is that it's a lot easier to allow for, someone to live on a little reservation in your territory if it's some minor province.
Right.
But an actual capital is much more valuable.
Right. That's true. But if he does fill it up with entrance guard, it's possible he gets like 300 siege defense in here after like 15 turns before somebody's coming around to take it. And it's not a minor commitment to go and to put an army that's going to crack through a 750 wall strength fort that has 300 siege defense in there. So
you say that, but I think that Gath, for example, can very casually put that together.
Yeah, no, that's true. So maybe that's who takes it. Maybe it's the person who has the most siege chaff available. Because this is what you need. Is like these things combined. But even that, like the Onyx Oracle isn't going to fuck around. If he gets this guy a charcoal shield and a big brand and quickness, and it could
Gath can kill that with advanced cast Earth Mages.
That's true.
But like Gath definitely has the tools to just shatter that.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. So anyway, this is the Pythium Agartha front. Very spicy. I think Pythium just moves on top of this fort and tries to take this for the time being.
I agree.
It's likely Agartha harries them down.
If Agartha tries for the cap, I'm not sure if they win, and even if they do, I don't think they take it.
Yeah. Did we miss any important battles here? I don't think TNG lost any thugs this turn, or at least we haven't seen them yet. I haven't seen them yet.
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure if TNG's built any more thugs though, which is that was
the Air Mages. Yeah. Okay, I think we've seen it.
I like the Serpent Priest's name in Pythium though.
Oh gosh, a dazzling display of talent. I love it.
It's also interesting that he's buying the actual Hydras because those guys are very expensive. They are sacred, but that's not really something that Pythium is going to be making much use of. The other thing which we haven't seen from Pythium, which I'm personally disappointed in, are the gray ones. We haven't seen him send out his gods to do supercaster things at anyone, not at Agartha, and not even now that he's, seeing the enemy at his gates.
If I recall, there was a gray one or two inside this fort. Maybe they're gone, but maybe they're part of this defense here, and he's waiting to see what comes to sit on top of this fort again.
Very possible, yeah. Also very interesting, TNG summoned a Behemoth. So those guys are not typically very efficient, but they are immune to foul vapors.
And I think what he's looking to do, because this we talked about, there was kind of a big group discussion in the game channel when
Gift of Flight.
the bug happened. This almost certainly is for Gift of Flight. And one of the nice things is that one of the mods we have on my improved casting AI, one of the things that it does is it takes Gift of Flight, which normally has essentially impossible targeting AI, and it gives it a range of 2 instead of 10 or whatever it was. So you can actually very reliably target stuff with Gift of Flight now. And why that's important for this is that either you can use these cubes, which you enlarge, or you can use behemoths and Gift of Flight them, and you can use them basically as fear, reasonably high protection, undead air elementals. So,
yeah, I actually quite like Behemoths, but basically for very specific purposes, and this is actually one of them where you need your trampler to be very reliable, and you don't mind the fact that it's very costly because you're willing to pay for that reliability.
Yes. And furthermore, there's a lot of buffs you can stack on them too. And of course, one of these guys on hold and attack is even easier than an elemental to stack buffs on. So, and in some ways it's better than an air elemental just because like they're not going to go down in size after they take a hit or two and start losing effectiveness. They're going to be effective for their whole lifetime as a size 6. So
yeah, they do a lot less damage though, just because air elementals have such high combat speed. So with that in mind, like I don't know if I would say that a Behemoth is better than an air elemental at the role that he's going for, which is mage sniping, but it is very good. And as you pointed out, the big deal with this is that it doesn't rely on gems.
yeah, combat speed helps with trample, but not as much as you'd think. Like, especially like if you get quickness on a behemoth, he's going to be a million times better than an air elemental. I have like a spreadsheet or something where I have the formula in it and you can test out different things. And trample helps, but it's like on the order of, I mean, not trample, combat speed helps, but it's on the order of like 20%. Like it's not a huge lever.
But air elementals do have like 3x the combat speed of a Behemoth. So yeah.
But I don't think it's 3
also,
times. I mean, we can actually, I have it. Let's just fill it out real quick.
It's
all right. I pulled up my handy dandy Excel sheet that I have in my library of personal Excel. It's probably my second thing. My second favorite part, aside from Dominions, like playing it, is making Excel sheets for it. But yeah, so an air elemental we went and put in. I've got all these things over here. But an air elemental is 20 combat speed. I'll turn quickness off. And you can get 4 tramples per turn, which is ridiculous. It's so much damage because these are each 20 AoE 1 armor piercing attacks. Or 20 damage armor piercing AoE 1 attacks. And then a behemoth is 12, as I was saying. So it jumps the tramples per turn down to 3.5, which is significant. And then
yeah, quickness makes a much bigger difference because it both directly doubles the number of tramples per turn and increases their combat speed by 2.
Right. So quickness is a huge effect, damage multiplier on tramplers here, where it jumps up to 7.5. But anyway, Excel stuff. And these are importantly all things that that TNG can do reasonably easily. So they can layer Iron Warriors. Yeah.
Yeah. Cubes unfortunately have the combat speed of 2, but
right.
with flight and quickness, they can still do their fair share of damage.
Yeah. Wait, let's look what it is for cubes. They actually have to move 2 tiles too. So in this case, it's 2.9 tramples per turn. They may actually even more benefit from quickness because if you can only move 2 per turn, 2 tiles per turn, can you do 3 tramples per turn? I don't know. Oh wait, no, this is with quickness. Without it, you can do 2 a turn. With quickness, oh wait, gosh, yeah. That's really funny.
Yeah, and the delay is something very noteworthy too, because it means that when they fly and land next to someone, they get hit before they can trample.
Right. With cubes, though, that's kind of okay because they're going to have
Yeah,
the acid shield, and you're like, stop hitting yourself.
they've got both the hit points and the damage shield to absorb it. Yeah, they're
Right.
they're very happy getting smacked a little.
Yeah. Barb's attacking them here. Okay, anything else we need to say on the TNG Pythium front?
No, don't think so. Other than I want to say, because I was complimenting Pythium before, and I have to say, even though he has put himself in a situation where his material disadvantage is so strong that there's really no way he can win from this point, he's been making a lot of mileage with what he has, both defensively in terms of being able to trade up against a vastly resource superior opponent, not just with the foul vapors traps that we'd seen at the start of the invasion, but even now is what he's been using to defend against the magic phase attacks. And then when he's hitting back, he's doing it with these extremely cost-effective raiding parties. So, making the most with what he has in order to keep putting up a very potent defense.
Yeah, I mean, he's showing a diverse range of tactics to defend himself and to counterattack. His tactical movement has been amazing.
Yeah, if only he'd taken a better build, maybe he would be winning.
Yeah, he probably the grand strategy I don't think is pieced together super well, but the tactics are great. Agartha, so he did attack here. Oh wait, no, this is Pangea.
So that was a province that Agartha had taken from Pangea, and which presumably Pangea is taking back. I believe that the reason that Agartha even took it in the first place is just to broaden his invasion front, so that he has more reliable retreat pathing and that sort of thing. But that was something that Pangea basically needed, or at least expected to have, in order to leave the retreat path open from that throne fort that he's sieging. So he was taking it back, and again, I'm assuming that this is like a negotiated transfer, only for Pythium counter raiders, which are fighting against the Arethian invasion, to bump the Pangean forces taking it back.
So it's kind of funny. But I thought something happened last turn where we thought it wasn't negotiated because there was a scout ping. Like Pangea pinged it with the scout, and we were like, okay, maybe this isn't agreed upon.
Well, I think that it was agreed upon, just a miscommunication that Pangea expected there to be 0 province defense, while Aretha still left 1.
Okay, that's possible too. And there weren't Aretha forces here, right?
Yeah, check out the name of that dryad. It's in French. It's kind of funny.
Le poison qui découle. What does découle mean? I can't remember.
I actually can't either. I can double check real quick.
The poison which looks like, I don't know. Découle.
Separating, it's decouple.
Okay, that's what I thought. But, okay. The poison that separates.
It's also a pun because in French, poisson is fish.
Okay.
So it's either the poison which separates or the fish which separates. So he's basically, calling out Aretha for being a jerk about that province.
That's funny. Okay, that is very funny. Who's Pythium again? Pythium is it Pythium?
That's Pangea.
Pangea. Who's Pangea? Pangea is Maven, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know. Is Maven French, I wonder?
I don't know. I just like the poison poisson pun. Yeah. Assuming that's what he was going for.
Okay, so here we get to the meat and potatoes. This is what Sai and I were talking about before we decided to fire up the recording. And that is...
Yeah. I'm scared for this army.
Well, so let's look at it. So the situation last turn was there was basically a no mage, like a 1 or 2 mage plus a few troops force here, and a 1 or 2 mage plus a few troops army here, with the obvious move that like, hey, let's get in the pond. And we were thinking, oh man, this is going to be a disaster because Arco has like majored in pond defense, or he's at least got his bachelor's, right? And as we can see, there are all these Bane thugs here, which I'm sure would have completely ruined this army if it went underwater.
I'm guessing that's actually a scout report mistake, and that it's not 6 Banes, but it's like 3 Banes and then 3 buff mages.
Yeah,
But if it's 3 mages of different kinds, then they're not going to show up in the report properly.
right. I think you're right
So we're
too.
probably seeing like a Mystic, an Orphic Mystic, and like maybe a Panageus or something.
Right.
But anyways, he's going to be doing like buff stuff, which can make these Banes actually very resistant against water elementals. And then assuming they're holding brands, they can then kill those water elementals fairly efficiently.
Yeah. And so instead he consolidates these few mages and these few troops on top of this fort, which was what I thought was the good move. And we can see Pillar of Fire here, which is also really interesting. I think we talked about that last episode, right?
Right. That evocation 8 is what you want to go for Maelstrom. So it's actually
Right.
fairly efficient from like a scaling perspective. And it also helps him out here because Pillar of Fire is one of the best ways to utilize fire magic in the late game.
Yeah.
The army that I'm scared for, though, is the one behind it, the one that's showing all of those Dedukudos with no gem support. So that's basically just asking to get wiped. Similar to Utgard's unprepared stack, where you can look at it and just see, oh, someone's going to drop on this and cast Foul Vapors or Bone Grinding, or both. We're similarly seeing something here where round 1, there are no buffs going off. There's no gems in order to actually put up any sort of like Foul Vapors or battlefield-wide effect. Like, this army is just vulnerable, and Arco has a Demi-Lich 2 provinces down.
Oh, that's right. But the Demi-Lich, we don't know if it can magic phase. Now, Demi-Liches can go with Cloud Trap. Wait, it has Cloud Trap? What are the paths on it?
Well, we know it can. We know that it can magic phase
because it's in Joman.
It's not
right.
Arco.
That's true. That's true.
Demi-Lich can Cloud Trap phase. It can only teleport.
It can only teleport. Okay.
Yeah.
So, wait, but what's Arco's blessing? Do we get to see it? I can't remember. Do you remember what it was?
We've seen Arco's Bless before. I remember that it was stacked with resistances and minor stat bonuses.
Okay, we're gonna get to see it up here.
It's a fairly generic stat resist Bless.
Okay, so magic weapons.
But for Astral.
Shock, fire. This is a lot on the Demi-Lich. Holy shit.
It's 6 death. Well, Demi-Liches don't pay a ton for extra pathing.
Yeah.
They do pay like a little bit, but they're decent as rainbows if you want to get something that has a relatively high base dominion and that goes fairly deep into death.
Right.
It's not my favorite for an Arco Pretender because I enjoy having natural mobility, but I also don't tend to invest super heavily into a Bless on this nation anyways, so it's kind of like a different tact from how I would design it to begin with. That said, the Bless that he has is showing a pretty decent path spread and death 6, which means that he can cast Bone Grinding.
Right. And at least Astral 4, and this is probably Earth 5. Earth 5, I'm guessing, and Nature 4, Water 4.
No, I'm thinking it's a lot of 3s. I'm thinking that's Fire 3.
Oh, you think so? Oh, okay, and then the strength is from this, not blood. Earth, not blood.
It could even be a mix. It could be 3 and 3, but yeah, I'm thinking it's just a ton of 3s there.
Okay. But I guess the important thing is kind of what you're saying. I don't know if he has Bone Grinding yet, though. Bone Grinding's what, 7?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah. He might have it. Alt 7's a pretty big priority probably for Arco. So he's probably pretty close.
Fighting Xibalba.
Now, there are differences between Demi-Lich and like an Idol of Sorcery. And the main one is that the Demi-Lich is not an innate caster. And it's also very easy to kill. So, for example, if you have lifelong protection, that's going to be very good defensive against the Demi-Lich jumping in, or air elemental summoners, or something like that, or Bottle of Wind, or whatever those things are.
Yeah, this can even kill itself with that Bone Grinding. It's got 3 hit points base. Right.
Yeah. So, it's not the same thing as an Idol of Sorcery, but like you were saying, this army does appear pretty naked. Now, I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure this army is going to have a scout with gems on it. And it's like, why reveal what I'm going to do, if you ping it by putting gems on my mages already, when there's nothing he could do to put something here reasonably.
Oh, to very briefly go back to what the pathing thing,
right?
We actually do know for sure that it's not Earth 5 putting the fire and shock resistance on there because of the other path that it has, We know that he has 3, at least like all of the elements,
Oh,
which means
okay.
that he has to have air 3.
Okay. Cool. All right. So, yeah. So anyway, there's probably a scout here that's going to put gems on it. But maybe there's still some way to cheese it with bone grinding on the Demi-Lich. I kind of feel like the crossbows too are going to do a good job of sending the Demi-Lich home before bone grinding goes off, unless he summons like a bunch of Arouse Hunger or Call of the Wild or like enough distraction so that he can get a bone grinding off. But
There's also
even
no nature mages in that army, so
this
Foul
one,
Vapors alone is going to do a ton of damage.
but again, like how long is the battle going to last? Right? Because everything's slower compared to the Idol of Sorcery. It's going to take a lot longer to cast, right? And then it only has to get hit once and it gets sent home. If it gets hit, it's also possible it gets
I'm not talking about
interrupted.
just the Demi-Lich. I mean,
Oh,
Arco
yeah,
has native Foul Vapors casters.
that's true. That's true. So I think the move. There's some other interesting things to note here. So there's a bunch of crossbowmen, and what I was thinking is, okay, so you move these guys here, and you probably like this army might move out or something. But then when you're on top of here, I don't think you want to stay. I think you claim this, and then you like have a slow war kind of against Darko. And maybe
Arithia might also just be going on that Pythium fort.
oh, that's also true.
Yeah, like we don't actually know where that army is going at this point because he is still fighting Pythium. So there's no guarantee that it goes directly against Arco. I think that, what you're saying is probably fair, that there's a very real chance it goes on that fort. But that army is, like I mentioned, just very unprepared in general. And there are very, very many things that can seriously mess up that many unsupported human mages.
Yeah. And communions are, I think does he not have any nature mages at all?
Yeah, there's no nature mages in that army. There's no nature mages in either of those armies, actually. He has some summoned. Like if you look at his capital, he has what are they called? The Dryad guys, a Hesperide.
Right.
Which is, a great nature mage. Also just a great big nature caster of your own. They can do their own Foul Vapors if that's your fancy. Hellcasters, like, Deep Nature is always amazing. And they're also very efficient. They're similar to Larry's in that they're some of the most efficient mage summons, period. So they're great to spam out, and, I'm very happy to see them. But they're not with that army.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. There's some risk. I'm pretty sure that we're going to see gems on it, but he might still be very vulnerable to Foul Vapors. Some of that may not matter if he doesn't try to take a straight up fight. Like if he just goes and dances around. Because once he's like, these mages are also just going to be great as counter raiders, right? Like you come in here, you split up, you have PD plus a few mages behind it, and just start applying pressure. Because right now, the thing that Arco is probably shitting their pants about, I'm guessing, is not Arethia, but instead Zabalba.
That's fair. I'm always worried when I see that many mages move out unsupported, especially looking at like the caliber of players that we're going up against. That just screams to me like, hey, you kill me, you can do lots of damage. Similar to how we had those same vibes coming out of Utgard's stack. I'm getting exactly that from that Arethia stack. And there's a chance that everything goes great, right? Like as you say, he has very many options. There's no reason to even assume that it's going on Arco directly right now. It might just be going after that Pythium fort and then split up, as you suggested. So he has lots of options. It's very versatile and all that good stuff. I'm just scared for it whenever I see that many mages all blob together without any answer to literally any battlefield clear, of which there are so many options at this stage in the game.
Yeah, that's true. There are a lot. Yeah, they can have answer to a lot of them if there's gems. Like they can do mass flight mass flight is going to fix half of the things too, right? Like if you just do mass flight, you dodge earthquake and you can jump on casters that are going to do Foul Vapors or whatever, So there are things you can do still, but like Fog Warriors, Arethia almost certainly is going to have. They get air mages, right?
Mm-hmm. They do get randoms. I didn't see if there were any in that army, but they are making a communion.
Yeah.
So they might be doing a round 2 mass flight. That's definitely possible.
So there's things. Arethia, they seem to have thought very well about how the war with TNC would go. They thought about what TNC was going to be doing. They seem to have pretty good counterplays in mind. It just feels like to me they're not going to be making super basic mistakes. That's just kind of like a belief that I have, but maybe it's wrong.
The other thing is that they're next to a water fort, and we know they have pearl mages, so they might be reinforcing with nature mages that way.
True.
And they're just not showing it yet.
Yeah, that's a great point. Um, okay, so I think we've covered this. Big scary army, a lot of mages, not a lot of gems. We have no idea what it's going to do. He's gotten on top of this fort. It now opens up 2 different provinces he could go to, or he could just attack this. So we'll have to see where this army goes. But if Aretha gets established in this pond, it's going to be a bad way for Arco.
Yeah, Arco definitely does have tools for fighting underwater, as he's shown, right? Like, he's got those Banes basically set up to beat up thugs or water elementals, but he doesn't have that many of them, and Aretha can send most of his mage corps underwater, whereas Arco cannot, because obviously he's facing that amphibian disadvantage.
There's a big difference between beating up a Joman underwater and beating up Aretha. It's not the same. Or at least the Joman that doesn't have Ryujin yet. So
yeah, and then if you look at Erithia's Pythium front, he's actually advancing there in terms of, like, taking a little more taking a couple more provinces. He's pushed into that little lake there. So he's setting himself up to support TNG further with just raiding, but he's still doing very low commitment stuff. This is not, a big death stack that's going to smash anything that Pythium can do to defend. He's setting himself up so that even if he does get trapped and, he does get hit by something unexpected, that he's not going to take any serious losses. Like, he could lose everything that he has on the Pythium front right now and still be a strong contender to win this game.
Yeah. And they're not really on the clock with Pythium. Like, Pythium is getting bled out right now. Like, if you can see the score graph here, this is pretty, Pythium was in a great position. They were tied for position 1 for a small point here. But it's just been they're essentially at an unsustainable size at the moment, and no signs of it getting better.
And if you look at Erithia's size in that same graph, for all that we've kind of been playing up how, scary and powerful and threatening Erythia is, they're only now getting close to the actual top of the pack. They've been, like, not by any means a rump state, but they haven't been, like, crazy huge either. Yeah. And they're only now getting into that upper echelon. And they're still placed number 5.
Right. Okay. Zabalba, troop movements. I think this can only spell going on Joman, but maybe he's going to do something different. And then,
well, the army in 199 has every reason to be there. They're simply taking it back in Indy province, so
this is what it looks like when 100 Aussies descend on Knights.
I also like that he actually thought through the fact that the Knights are going to charge forward and not go on the Ocelotls. So he actually did bring that melee chaff in order to make sure that his mages weren't in any danger.
Yeah.
Also, his god is in 198, but that god is almost certainly site searching because we know that he's running around with just 5 Ocelotl bodyguards.
All right. If you're Arco, do you say, hey, let's come to concessions? I realize I can't hold this. I'm going to give this to you for free. Let me get my army out so I can fight Aretha with it. Or what do you do?
That does not sound like the Arco that we know and love.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Okay. We can dismiss it just from that. But I'm like, I look at this, there's no way, right? There's no way. If Arco pulls off a defense here against 300 murder kitties, he's going to be the honorary winner of this game, even if he loses it. It's just going to be so epic.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I'm still hoping that he wins.
Yeah. And then he's got another big army here where he has patrolled out with 150 Obsidian warriors. He's like flexing on all these scouts. He's like, yeah, this is what I've got.
Yeah, well, he was already doing that in his capital before. But yeah, he is showing off the numbers of sacreds there. With that, to be fair, that from what we're seeing in the scout graph, that is actually pretty much the entirety of his army there. So, that lines up because we see 220 in that battle report, and we see 230 units in the province.
Yeah. The bless here to remind us is magic weapons, poison resistance, fire resistance, cold resistance, defense, undying force strength, combat speed.
Yeah, I mean, you can say it's just a very modest stat resist plus.
No, I was looking at it because I'm thinking this is probably Arca's biggest army. It's like a little bigger than what he has in Joman. what's over here in Ulm. And this doesn't look, because this is fewer murder kitties, it's more of the Obsidian Warriors. This doesn't look like an impossible defense to me. Like, I can see Arco winning this one, though it would be bloody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Although that is his profit there.
Which
Arco's
one?
profit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that he brought the Muse up as well, because that tells me that he has more commanders in Ulm than he has elsewhere, or more mages in Ulm than he has elsewhere. Because the Muses give a magic or a research bonus to the site,
Oh,
or
right.
to the province that they're in.
Mhm.
So that tells me that he's collected more of his mage core there than even in his capital.
Yeah. So
Which does make sense if that's the next war that he's looking to fight. So yeah, he absolutely, if there is a place where Ulm is going to win a battle, his northern front, Xibalba's southern front, is where I can see that taking place. And then yeah, as you pointed out on that research graph, Xibalba is terminally almost behind.
yeah.
So like
This is probably like maybe a 1-7. I feel like a 7's a bit of a. This is probably 1-7 where Arco's at, right?
Well, no, actually, because we know that he's well ahead of where Pangaea was at the start of the Marignan invasion. Because you can kind of see where the Marignan invasion started, because that's where the graph starts to flatten. Pangaea was already at 1 level 7 there.
Right here?
Well, he had what? Arafend is 7 or 6.
He got Serpent's Blessing well into it. He got Serpent's Blessing, I think, like right here.
Arafend's level 6. My bad.
Yeah, he did get Serpent's Blessing though, and he got that, I think, kind of right around here. So if we go back to the research graph, right around here.
Yeah, so Arco is actually well past at least 1 level 7.
Okay. So he could be getting close to almost probably 1.5, maybe even 2 level 7s. So that means Fog Warriors.
Yeah, he's not going to get it with Fates most likely, which is the other one that we've been talking about as being a pretty big spell. But it's not by any means, I think, a requirement. But we also don't see any golems, so his only super combatant / thug options are going to be the transformation luck boy that he's got in his capital, presumably recovering from his disease afflictions right now.
Yeah. So I think
the Sea King maybe
could
also be kitted out. I'm just thinking.
Yeah,
of ways
that's a great way to cheese this army potentially.
Because to me, the way that you beat this type of stack is setting up a super combatant rather than doing something army versus army, and doing that in conjunction with things that are going to clear out the mages. So stuff like bone grinding, foul vapors, basically ways to get rid of the mages and therefore get rid of the undead leadership, and then try to just cause as much attrition among the Ocelotls as you can through the use of something that they just can't kill.
Yeah, the other option Xibalba has is to just skip this fort and go deep and start taking all the other forts.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, they have the Xibalban mobility advantage, so there's no reason that they need to take a death stack battle.
And then that puts Arco in a position where, like, okay, well, if he's going to do that, I have to run at his forts. And then that gives the Xibalba the ability to, like, move every single mage as well as, like, 50 sacreds that he's summoned to, like, do some crazy defense. Because, like, if Xibalba skips this fort and starts heading south and Arco moves up, the next turn this army's going on top of this fort. And that gives you the ability to fly in. Well, it's not as many mages as I was thinking. No, these guys can make it here too. So you can fly in mages from 1, 2, 3 forts. Yeah, 3 forts and then a few of the forest labs too. And be like, okay, we're bringing everybody. It's an option.
Also has really, really scary assassination options.
Right. But
including Charm Assassins, my personal favorite.
But I think the other thing is, like, on one hand, you like look at this and you're like, okay, well, I'm not sure if I can take it as Xibalba. Like, maybe I don't move out. If he waits 2 or 3 more turns, that might be the difference between Arco, and he won't know this, of course, right? But that will probably be the difference between Arco having Will of Fates and not having it. So these fights become very, very different with Will of Fates being cast. And that's, like, Fog Warriors is nice. Fog Warriors lets you kind of survive a little bit. At least, it's like a twist fate, basically. But Will of Fates lets you actually go head-to-head with these very, very killy summons and possibly come out on top.
Yeah, and we don't really know what all Shibalba has on their own side when it comes to magic, but we know that it can't be all that much.
Right.
It's interesting because
Despite having
I
magic
identify.
scales. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I identify LA Shibalba as being the one out of the three that can rely the least on its hammer and kind of has to really go dig into its tricks of different bat magic that it has, which is, a very great toolkit. But Folek in this game is really focusing on that hammer. He's just
Yeah.
focusing very heavily on his blood income and just trying to get as much mass out of those sacreds as he can.
Yeah. I do like that he kind of picked rather than straddle, because I feel like if you straddle that too much, you end up without a critical mass of Aussies, and you don't really have the research exactly either to have a ton of stuff. So I like the idea that he kind of picked, but I kind of was hoping he would pick magic.
Yeah, but I think he's going to be doing fine, and it's just going to be a matter of his needing to find a way to catch up, which is going to involve getting a lot more golden infrastructure in order to be able to keep buying those mages.
Yeah.
The fact that he has so many of his super cheap and kind of useless ahas, which are like the just the most cost-effective
rats.
researchers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says that he, is at least thinking about it and that he's paying some attention to it, but he is just so far behind in research that it's something that he needs to put even more time and treasure into correcting.
No fucking way. Look what he's got.
Oh, and he didn't even lab it.
Yeah, no. What a flex. Not even labbing this.
I guess you don't need to as Shivalba.
Do they get reliable? Yeah, they got ways. Do they get reliable Earth 2s? I
Well, they
think
get
it's the
reliable
cap
Earth
only,
at
right?
least. The Camazot, so they have reliable Earth 2 in their big cat mages,
Right.
the frog guys, and then they have lower levels of Earth on their cheaper bat mages.
Yeah. So these guys can get Earth 2, every one of them. The Camazots, oh, they can get Earth 2. Okay. So yeah, it's not as big of a deal.
The Chilanob, also 1 in 3 of them is an Earth 2.
Okay.
So yeah, like Shivalba does have Earth access.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this isn't actually that big of a deal. It'd be a big deal for other nations, though. So okay, we'll get to see what happens here. I think probably Zabalba can attack next turn. I'm not sure.
We don't know when they started their nap countdown, or even if they started their nap countdown.
Right.
We have a little bit of a fog of war of our own for that.
Yeah. All right, coming down to Vedheim. So Vedheim, I believe there's a magic phase attack here because I peeked it turn ahead of time. So there's a bunch of stealthy dudes.
It's attack.
Yeah. So this was like a trap. There were dudes that snuck in here, and they were sitting here stealthy in this province with Utgard. And then on top of that, Vedheim magic phases in this lady, the dog walker, this person, the adept to the Silver Order, a couple of them actually, and then teleports in this adept to the Iron Order. So at least can this guy teleport? Yeah. So all the Mage Corps teleported in basically.
Is the commander there on the wolf? Is that the guy who was stealthed in the province?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So this guy was stealthy leading these dudes, and then and of course the Idol of Sorcery shows up.
So I'm gonna go ahead and take a stab and say that he had stealth squads set up in multiple provinces, and this is just the one that we saw because this is where Utgard's army wound up being.
Right. Now, because he's supporting an army, I doubt we're going to see bone grinding, so we'll probably see a different array of tactics here. So
yeah, I would guess Wailing Winds.
Yeah,
but we'll have to see what's actually cast.
Now there are a lot of Garmherdings here. This is about
but
70.
That's a good thing,
right?
You want them in this fight so that they die.
And there's one thug, and the thug has a dusk dagger and a flesh eater, would certainly be able to kill the Idol of Sorcery reasonably quickly, even if it got in close. But the question is, will it get in close? And that we're gonna have to see.
Yeah. Who's the two-eyed? Oh, that's his god. Okay, yeah. There's Wailing Winds.
So Wailing Winds is up, which is going to make it very difficult for Utgard to do any kind of like Skelly spam communion. We've also got Darkness being put up by Godfather Waffles. So that's also the god.
Okay, so he's using this god just for big death stuff.
Now, does he have... He does have Spirit Sight in his Bless.
Mm-hmm. We'd actually noted that before, and I'm not totally sure why he bothered with darkness, but I'm guessing it's just to completely defang the Gamhams.
Yeah. Because these guys in cold have pretty good defense. And the Garms have pretty good attack, especially once they go berserk. But I think with darkness, it pushes, well, that one especially.
Yeah, these guys, well, many of them are crippled.
Oh, gosh. Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
They've all been hit by bone grinding, so their stats are even worse. Oh, well, we were seeing them with the darkness penalty, too. So with the darkness penalty, they've got 7 attack. That's not going to hit very often.
Yeah. So that does make sense then in context as far as like
Oh.
why he guessed that.
And the round 1, Wailing Winds has triggered retreat on a lot of these Garms.
Yeah, because they didn't get a chance to get berserked yet.
Right.
Although, if anything, I think that Veriha might even be disappointed at how quickly many of these guys are running, because I think that he would prefer having them kind of stagger in a little bit.
Oh, gosh. The Garms are in contact with the mages, though.
Sure, yeah.
That's not
But
what
these
you
are
want.
not the. And the other thing, though, is that the Garms that are in front are the ones that didn't start this fight limp or crippled.
Right, that's a great point. Now they're getting trampled down. They're no longer in melee with the mages. Okay, so they almost, I think, 1 or 2 mages there.
If any.
I mean,
And yeah.
Wailing Winds has just made it so they don't even really get a chance to fight.
Yeah, and I would say that, like I mentioned, I think that Vedheim is, if anything, slightly disappointed at the fact that they were so many of them routed, because he could have killed quite a lot more.
Yeah, he probably could have put them in.
Oh, he did lose a couple of mages. Okay, yeah, he lost the Jotun
The
Gacha
Gacha
and
too.
one of the adepts. Yeah,
He could have done Wailing Winds later in the script, and then they would have gotten berserked and then would have been abandoned by their mages. That might have been a little better. But he still kills 21 of the Garm Herdings.
he kills all the convenience slaves. He kills the thug.
Right.
I mean, this is obviously a very clear win for Vedheim.
Right.
I was just saying that, like,
it could have been more complete.
could have been even better. But yeah, this is a very decisive win, and obviously this was very clearly planned. And like I mentioned, I would guess that he had more than one province with the stealthed remedy in them. I'm guessing, looking at this, that at least some of those were already stealthed in this province.
Yeah. And
and he had another magic phase attack actually. Oh no, I'm wrong. That was the only one.
Yeah. This one could have been, because there were adepts of the Silver Order here. But yeah. So
I think that what we're seeing here is just a very clear difference, not just in terms of like what resources they have, but also just in terms of the effort that the two players are putting in. Like,
Right.
this Vedheim is, I'd mentioned at the very start of the game, like when we were kind of like reviewing the nations and players, that I think that Owl and his Hydra partner are some of the best current Dominion players in terms of like a mechanical understanding of the game, just like in general. Like,
Yeah.
in total, I think that they're like, they're up there.
it's
in terms
Alan
of just like,
Kirkcop, right? That's who's playing this? Or is that his partner?
it's
Yeah.
Owl and Kurt Kopp.
Yeah.
So Kurt Kopp is one of the players that tests things very thoroughly. So he is willing to put in the time in his turns to figure out what's going to work and what won't. And between the two, they're both just very, very strong players.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't played with Kurt Kopp, but he's always saying smart things. Same with Al. So, and we can see it here. I mean, these were thinking many turns ahead, planning out what he's going to do. This really decisive. And it, like, we're looking at it and we're seeing, okay, well, this win could have been more complete. Maybe he casts it later. I bet you he probably tested casting it later. And this, getting back to maybe that Alpha Star AI, maybe it wasn't the thing that won the hardest, but it was the thing that won every single time, right? Without any weird
losses. Yeah.
Right. Sure, some guys ran off the screen, but it's like this was just decisive every single time. So
yeah. So very, and between the fact that Utgard, we kind of pointed out, had been playing pretty much most of the game after his initial expansion blunders, as though he was like not really putting too much time into his turns. I think Vedheim's going to steamroll him.
Yeah,
with very little losses. And part of that is admittedly the nation matchup. Like, this is already a very Vedheim favored matchup to begin with. But more of it's going to be what we're seeing here, just the sheer difference in the effort that the two of them are putting into their scripting.
Yeah. So it's worth pointing out too, I had mentioned last turn, one of the moves Utgard could make is all-inning all their mages to move them up here. And if they had done that move that I was saying, it's a reasonable move to consider, I think they would be totally out of the game now, because I don't think there's anything they could have done to organize this army, which was here, to survive the god, like the full magic phase attack.
It wouldn't have gone through anyways, actually. They don't have the map move to
that's right. It
move
would
into
have
hostile
stopped
territory.
it. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, that's interesting.
Yes, that was extremely safe from Vedbeheim in that respect, in that he denied Utgard even the option to try to force a big battle in that one province.
Right. Oh man, we have a scout genocide happening up here.
I would guess
having
that's
4
actually just a
scouts.
blood hunting province.
Yeah, TNG having 4 scouts in here. What's up, guys? And yeah, small raiding down. Oh no, this isn't even raiding. This is patrolling.
That's not a small raid though. That's actually a very serious stack there.
Yep. I wonder if he's got this set up for air elementals. Let's take a quick peek. What is he doing?
Oh, no gems. Okay.
Maybe it's just Soul Slave. It might be Soul Slave for Scrotty.
Yeah, that makes sense. He has been using that Scrotty thug offensively. But yeah, with that battle, I don't think there are any thugs left in Utgard's camp.
Yeah, certainly
none. Make more,
none that we've seen before.
Yeah. He does have more Scrotty, but I don't think he has, or we haven't seen any geared up yet.
Yeah, so I think it's, we haven't even seen, nor has Utgard seen the proper army that rolled in after the magic phase attack here. So, yeah, I think we're just going to see these guys go forward on all cylinders and mow these dudes down. There's still some ability for, it's possible too that Utgard doesn't take the pressure off, Utgard Vedheim, and keeps magic phasing these Garms. And that way there's not going to be any way to combine the mages with the Garms. So
he can't actually. The idle sorcery doesn't have a lab.
Well, I mean, but he might have the adepts or whatever, right? And if he's got stealth dudes here, he could just keep pinging them, presumably. But
yeah, I don't think he does another magic phase attack this turn, just because he did devote his heaviest hitters to that one battle there in order to eliminate another significant chunk, I should say, of Utgard's army.
Yeah,
and basically, take any chance of a serious fight out of him. I think irregular phase moves from this from this turn. Yeah, he's building a lot in that province. Is again just guessing, and then he can follow it up with a magic phase attack on Utgard's cap, while finalizing that siege.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it, because basically he can move it in, bone grinding the cap, and then move the army in behind it, and there's no way there's ever going to be any mage support when the army shows up. The only thing is that can kind of backfire if there's a gym baiting normal phase attack, but the PD doesn't trigger bone grinding, and then he could end up bone grinding himself, which would be really funny. But
yeah, given the way that he set up his first bone grinding attack, though, I think that he's going to be using returning as a regular spell. So even if the province defense doesn't trigger the bone grinding, the idol won't be there anymore.
But if it doesn't trigger gym use, it will go off script and might Horde of Skeletons win or something, right?
That would be interesting, yeah.
Yeah. And then if dudes moved in here and they triggered gym use, then they would fight the army plus the idol of sorcery in the normal phase. So yeah.
If he gives it a ring of returning, though, the chances that things go that terribly wrong are fairly low.
But he hasn't been doing that. We haven't seen Ritual of Returning or Ring of Returning on the idol yet. So
that's true. Yeah.
Anyway, that's that. Marignon,
has been breached. Yes.
Yeah, it's been breached. They're patrolling out more scouts over here.
And Pangea moved up to completely retake everything that was what you could say is theirs.
Right.
Including a thug, or a thug setup, actually, which lost. So that one worked fine, but on the other fort, they lost a dryad.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not sure why he's got 2 dryads here. Oh, more French.
Huh.
C'est good, amer.
Tu seras not ne vote. Wait, all.
Oh, it's one sentence. I see.
All is not. My French, I used to be somewhat fluent. It's sadly it's left me over the past 20 years.
Yes, same. I haven't spent enough time in the French-speaking parts of Switzerland.
Yeah. Okay, so yep. Now, what I'm really interested to see is where the Pangean armies are moving, and because they've gotten out of the war with Vedheim, they're a free agent, and sometimes the best thing to look at is where they're moving stuff. They've kept most of their mages here in this lab, as well as an idol of sorcery. The troops appear to be coming north, which indicates he might be going on Arethyia, but I don't see the huge kind of... He's probably just rebuilding, at least for the next few turns, and probably hasn't made up his mind, is what I'm guessing. But...
Yeah, I think... Oh, so Les Gouffres Amers means to these bitter abysses, but it's also a reference to the Albatross,
Oh.
which is a Baudelaire poem.
Oh, cool.
I didn't catch that, but that might be what he's going for, or he might just be saying that everything is going to the abyss.
Yeah, I mean, again, that might be a reference towards to Arethyia. So maybe he's subtly broadcasting his diplomatic intentions here. He's not very happy with the fish people.
No, okay, so his other dryad, the one that I had thought was a fish pun, is also referencing the same Baudelaire poem.
Oh, cool.
It's called The Poison.
The Poison. Ah, I see. But okay, I think he's probably gonna decide what he wants to do while he kind of licks his wounds after this Vedheim war. But my guess is Arethyia.
Yeah,
hard to say.
I was wrong about the fish pun, I suppose.
Anything else? I think we've covered everybody.
So we covered TNG's advance into Pythium. We covered Arco's little thing, presumably a bot province. Speculation on Xibalba. Yeah, I think we did.
All right, closing thoughts?
No, other than I'm really happy to see Vedheim continuing to do well. I think that's kind of the player who I'd called out as someone who I expected to make a really strong showing in these finals, and I'm glad that he's living up to that. From the Xibalba side, that's the other player who I'd called before the game started as someone that I knew as being fairly strong. Because of how conservatively he's been playing this game, we haven't really gotten to see that from him. So I'm hoping that he's going to make that showing here in the Arco War. So my allegiances are torn because on the one hand, I really want Arco to win this, but on the other hand, I also want Xibalba to show off the skill that I know that Fulak has. Outside of the player commentary, I think that you were right to call up Pangea as the next big free agent. But what I'd been saying last turn, and which I actually still think is true, is that he should just go try and take the freebies. He should grab some free Pythian land. He might even be able to grab the last of the Agartha stuff. And since a fair portion of his army is going to be up in that area.
You mean Gath?
Pangea, yeah. No, Pangea.
Coming up this way. Yeah, he can make a play for that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he definitely can grab that southern Agartha fort if, he chooses to make a play for that. But yeah, we'll have to see what he actually goes for. But you're right that Arethyia is one of the handful of remaining players that he borders that he has a large border with that isn't, his one true ally Gath.
Yeah. Yeah, and the relationship between Xibalba and Arethyia seems a little tense, so I wouldn't be too surprised if that alliance, or that not really alliance, but if their interests stop aligning at some point, and if that happens, Pangea is probably in a great place to join forces with Xibalba and stab Arethyia.
Yeah, I would say that Xibalba, at least for the next segment of the game, is probably going to be embroiled in fighting Arco. Mm-hmm. So if you're right and Pangea decides to go for Arethyia as their next target, which I agree is a very viable choice, that's really just going to be pulling Arethyia out of the Arco conflict and making that go back to a 1v1.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, all very interesting stuff. Because a 1v1, I become much less convinced that Xibalba is going to be on the winning side of that. Especially,
I think they can. I think it's a skill matchup.
Yeah, I think so
That's
too.
What I call it.
But we're very quickly getting to the point where Arco's going to have Will of Fates. I think we'll see it this war, and that's the spell he needs to start turning the tide. It doesn't mean he's going to win, but Zabalba can't really super easy. Like if Zabalba loses an army of 200 Aussies, that's very hard for him to replace at this point in the game. So
Yeah. I think that to beat Will of the Fates, Chivalva really needs its own, like, later mid-game magic. It needs
right.
its Wailing Winds and that sort of thing.
Let's take one look at that before we sign off of this turn. If we look at research,
I don't think they're there. Yeah.
we
I don't
said they
think
were
they're-
really low, but let's just get all the riffraff out here. Let's just look at these two guys.
Oh, you want to compare them to Pangea and look at when they hit Arrowfend?
Yeah, so this was about when let me do provinces here. All right, let's look at Gath. Or wait, now let's look at Marignan when they lost their army, because they lost their army basically to turn. I think this was when Serpent's Blessing came out for Gath. So Gath was like right here. So Serpent's Blessing 7 is somewhere right around here. So 6,
Yeah.
Zabalba's getting close to potentially having, like, by the time they get here, so in probably 6 turns, Zabalba will have Wailing Winds, which is probably about the same time that Arco will be having Will of Fates, or maybe a little later.
6 is actually quite a bit lower than that.
Yeah, okay.
Because Gath had a fairly spread out research, and Pangea had Arrowfend at the start of the war, which was Eng 6. So
Okay.
you can actually go a fair bit further back to look at where level 6 starts. But I also think that, or we don't know for a fact that that's what they're rushing, right? Like there are a lot of different things that
Pangea also
go
was
for.
way far ahead of Gath in research, so
That's true. Yeah.
it could have still been the same point. I think the 6s are probably right around here. Maybe I mean, it depends how focused you are, obviously, but I think this region is like the 6th region. I think this region is like the first 7. But anyway,
Yeah,
point is it's close. Zabalba is actually going to be entering into a phase where they can do some of the important stuff like Darkness. They can do some of the important stuff like Wailing Winds, depending on what their research targets are. They could potentially even do stuff like Rigor Mortis if they want to, depending on how they're researching. So
that's actually the other thing I was going to bring up is so those are kind of like the big ones: Rigor Mortis, Darkness, Wailing Winds. Rain of Stones also is actually surprisingly good against Naked Communion nations like Argo,
right.
in that it can just interrupt their spell casting. So Will of the Fates might keep them alive, but if they're not actually casting anything on their turns, then how much does that matter?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
and then of course there's Howl, which both sides can do. Like there's a ton of different magic options that both will have, but Chivalva's going to have a lot fewer of those options. So we'll have to see, both what they focused on and how effectively they're able to use it.
I think we're just talking this up right now. I think this is becoming, for me at least, the most anticipated conflict of this next phase. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens as these two square off. Because, I mean, from what you've said, we have everything, we expect really great scripting from Zabalba, and we've seen already really great scripting from Arco. So I'm just really looking forward to seeing how this plays out.
Yeah, I think both these are very strong players, and because we don't know either what Chivalva is focusing on or even where Arco is at in terms of like what their research priorities have been, there's so much that's up in the air that we're not even going to be able to see until those major battles actually finally come out.
Right, and neither will the players. They'll only know, they'll have one more card they can see, which is the card that they're holding, but they won't know what the other player's doing either. So, yeah. I think with that, we'll end it here. So thank you so much for joining me, Sai.
Absolutely. Thanks for hosting. This is a ton of fun, as always.
Yeah. And viewers, if you've made it to the end, once again, I want to both congratulate you and thank you. And we will see you next time. Take care.